I hate to shit on my man Jared Goff, but he stops the 49ers from being Rams bad. So he's going to hold the team. He's going to hold the team together, be real solid.
But that's not Jared's fault.
You're listening to Let's Talk Fantasy Football, where men of fantasy genius have realized, hey guys, we don't need real football skills to dominate on the fantasy field. Yeah. So slap on your pads and grab your helmet. Shit's about to get real.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to another edition of Let's Talk Fantasy Football. I'm your host, Nick Schreck, and joining me tonight, we have Jared Goff's number one fan and Tavon Austin's number one fan, Vinny Gonzalez. Vinny, how you doing?
What's up, Shrek?
And we're going to keep it here on the East Coast with the DON himself. He is smiling wide. He's got some new 5-star reviews on iTunes. He is feeling good. Don, how you doing?
Hey, man, just listen, if you enjoy me, just throw up a 5 stars on iTunes. I'd really appreciate it.
He's the inspiration around the podcast, guys. We love having him here, and we wouldn't be a show without him. So before we jump into the podcast, guys, let's give a shout-out to Vupiq, the revolutionary app that allows you to play fantasy football live while watching the game on TV, predict the plays, the result of the play, and literally play fantasy football. You can sign up for the beta now by going to letstalkfantasyfootball.com/Vupiq. So, guys, quick outline of what we're getting ourselves into here on this podcast. We're talking about the NFC West, and that's going to comprise the 49ers and the Seahawks tonight, guys. And a quick self-promo. Find us on Android, on iOS. Download the app at letstalkfantasyfootball.com/Apple and /Android. And we'll talk about it a little bit at the end, guys, but we are also on Alexa with Amazon. Get NFL news, flash briefings, and listen to the podcast while you walk around your house.
So you're saying you can't find us on Fios, though, right?
Not Fios, iOS.
Okay.
Not yet.
Not yet. We're working on that TV deal with Verizon, so maybe Fios will be in our near future.
Because last podcast, I hit the on-demand button trying to find us on Fios.
Yeah, they've been having some outage issues, so I've been on the phone with them trying to figure that out. But we'll see if we can get the show back up and running on Fios for the fans, for the people. Got to keep them happy.
People helping people, man.
Dude, speaking of people helping people, let's talk about the San Francisco 49ers because they are just nothing but smiles and sunshine there. We'll start with – I'm sorry?
It's just help people.
People helping people. Brian Hoyer. Actually, we have a question that came in here from Ed. Ed's question of the week, guys. And he wants to know if Brian Hoyer is a sneaky upside guy to take late. So what do you guys think here with Brian Hoyer, QB at the helm here for the 49ers?
No, but I like Brian Hoyer, just like last year where he was a really good filler. If you have a quarterback that gets hurt midseason or bye, Brian Hoyer has had flashes in Cleveland. Forget the Texans, but then he came in and played really well for Chicago while he was healthy. Brian Hoyer actually has a decent supporting cast between Garcon. They acquired Marquise Goodwin, so he got some speed right there. And Jeremy Curley, who always seems to be relatively consistent. So he's got some people around him. Hoyer can be a consistent QB. Only problem is if you're going to draft him, I think that's a waste because Hoyer, who knows how many weeks he's really going to last. But he's a really good person to watch out to pick up on the waivers.
Yeah, he's a nice bye-week fill-in at some point. Injuries hit. Maybe he's picking up steam at some point. I know he kind of did last year on the Bears. So
big time.
Yeah, he's no stranger to that. Yeah, he's a waiver wire kind of guy. Yep. I wouldn't draft him. Sorry, Ed. But Brian Hoyer is a very stable quarterback that I hate to shit on my man Jared Goff, but he stops the 49ers from being Rams bad. So he's going to hold the team. He's going to hold the team together, be real solid.
But that's not Jared's fault.
No, Jared's a good guy.
No, it's not that. If anybody wants clarity on this situation, go back and listen to the other podcast. Vividly explained.
Yes, we have Jared Goff's number one fan here. We think
Rams are trying to do things, guys.
Yes, they are. Let's keep it on.
This is no Hackenberg, right?
This is no Hackenberg. Brian Hoyer here, guys. I agree. He's got a brutal weeks 1 through 4 here, Ed. So definitely don't look to draft him. He's got Carolina, Seattle, the Rams, and the Cardinals. So if you want him, like you said, off the wire, great. But I don't think he's worth drafting unless you're in a best ball league or something where you want to bury him for late season or something like that without waivers. But let's go from the QB spot, guys, over to the running game. Carlos Hyde is kind of he's the starting guy as of now, but we're hearing rumblings that he may not be the guy that you actually want in San Francisco. Vinny, I'm going to throw Carlos Hyde over to you. I know you talked about the running back situation a little bit before we jumped on. What's your take on the whole Carlos Hyde situation?
Oh, Carlos Hyde is great. He's definitely the one I want. The rumors you're talking about were that he was going to get cut. I know we talked about it earlier because that's what was happening, but now it kind of just seems it's just business as usual. When Carlos Hyde is healthy, he has been very good. The problem is he has not been healthy very often, and he usually explodes right out the gate, hits his ceiling week 1, and everyone gets really excited. Like, hey, I drafted Carlos Hyde. I hit on his good year. This is going to be a great year. Gets hurt, falls off a cliff, whatever. But he's going right now, 10th pick in the 4th round. He's usually a guy that sees somewhere between 220 carries to like 250 carries if he would be fully healthy for an entire season. He didn't eclipse 1,000 yards last year, came a little bit short, still had 6 touchdowns, made some points up in the receiving game, had a couple touchdowns there. So I think when this team is going to be bad and in need, they might lean on him a little more for some receiving production. So you could bank on that. Maybe his catches go somewhere from where he's dwelling in the 20s, maybe somewhere in the 40s, perhaps. This is all banking on him having a healthy season, which he hasn't been able to do. But where I was going with his ADP currently, he's a nice bailout pick. If you're having a rough time with running back early and Carlos Hyde is flowing around there, he's not the sexiest pick, obviously. 49ers probably won't be that good. So it's always weird taking a good running back on a bad team. But Carlos Hyde has bailed me out of some mocks that I've done, and I'm pretty comfortable. I've gotten used to taking him around there as kind of a safety valve. He does usually slip out of the 4th, somewhere into the 5th. So look for him to slide a little bit. I think a lot of people are down on him, but it's really more of a health thing than anything. So I think if usually I say don't draft based on like what might happen health-wise, but it could work out with Carlos Hyde, especially somewhere in the mid-rounds there.
Yeah, I mean, I'm super torn on Carlos Hyde because, like you said, I think he's that bailout pick kind of in the middle, depending on how your draft goes. Because I've been in that situation where I get down mocks and I'm like, I'm taking Carlos Hyde, and I never feel great about it. And what scares me is kind of what I touched on quick. Again, it's early in the season, but with Brian Hoyer's with the schedule, I mean, they face Carolina, Seattle, the Rams, and the Cardinals in the first 4 weeks. Pretty good defenses overall. And the scheme, again, I'm not a big X's and O's guy with NFL, but, again, I'm reading this here from Roto World. He played better when the offense went heavy on the shotgun under Chip Kelly. Shanahan doesn't really do that as much. He averaged 4.81 yards per carry on shotgun runs versus 3.8 under center. So that with the schedule is a little wary for me. But again, like you said, if you get down to that 5th round and your running backs are shot, the board looks bad in that 5th round. So you're kind of you kind of almost have to take that leap of faith because you're kind of stuck. You don't really have another choice.
As like a comparison,
it doesn't get better for a while either.
No. Well, and that's what scares me, and that's why I go back and forth when I mock, because the stats tell me like the first 4 weeks are probably going to be rough for Carlos Hyde. We've heard the GM and the coaches come out and they don't know if he's the guy, and that was back in April or whatever, but not great comments to hear. But like you said, that whole stretch there is kind of like it's a running back wasteland. So do you take the plunge or not? I don't know.
I'm cool with Carlos Hyde. I owned Carlos Hyde in a few leagues last year because I went receiver heavy last year. So Carlos Hyde, I knew it going into expectation that he was going to probably be my RB1 for the most part. It really didn't work out too bad though. So if he's going to be an RB2 for you or even an RB3, I'm very cool with it. Again, you got to worry about injury, but there's so many people you got to worry about injury at this point. I'm fine with it. I'm not confident with him as being my RB1, but if he's my RB2, I'm fine with it. So I'm fine with where he's landing.
Yeah, when you take Carlos Hyde, it's kind of like if you take Sammy Watkins, you're like, all right, he just has to stay healthy and he'll have a fucking great year, and you know that. It's just his ADP is factored, it's all risk factored. So it's not a bad thing. There might be a lot of stigma around him, like all that stuff that we were saying. So it's a guy you take and you just kind of pray it works out.
Yeah, I don't think you ever feel good about the pick,
right?
With owning Carlos Hyde. Vinny, do you have anything else on the other running backs here? Joe Williams, he's generated a bunch of hype here.
Yes. Yeah.
What do you want to tell us about Joe Williams?
He's a guy that's, again, getting the rookie hype that is so common in fantasy football. It kind of drives me nuts at some points, but he's going right now in the 12th round with the 6th pick. He had huge character issues coming out of UConn and Utah. I mean, he left UConn because he got caught stealing shit, and then he only came back to Utah to finish out his career because of injuries, and they brought him back in. So, and he also, there's a lot of negatives, but he also had a lot of fumbling issues. This will go with what Walsh always says. He doesn't pass block and rarely catches passes out of the backfield. So I don't really see the hype on Joe Williams at all, especially in the Shanahan offense. They got to have to catch the ball at some point and pass protect. So I think Carlos Hyde is the guy that will fit that mold. I'm not seeing Joe Williams coming in and taking the job or usurping it at all, but his ADP is it's totally fine. This is where a lot of the rookie guys' ADPs should be that we always talk about, like Dalvin Cook and all that shit. So where he's at is fine. It's kind of a wasted pick to me. If you want to take him whatever, I don't see it paying off really. And right now on the depth chart, Tim Hightower is running back 2. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And Tim Hightower we've seen be more than capable of taking a lot of work from some people like Mark Ingram, which is the bane of my existence, is basically Tim Hightower, ruining good stuff for good people.
How old is Tim Hightower? He's been around for a while.
I think he's up there with Chris Johnson. This is probably 33, 32, that zone.
Yeah, he's got
no, he just turned 31.
31,
yeah. But he's been around.
30s, yeah.
I think he's a solid backup. Yeah, I don't know. I don't think you guys have to worry about Joe Williams at the moment.
Yeah. The 49ers probably work in Hightower way more than Joe Williams, I think pretty much the entire season.
Yep, agreed. Joe Williams may be in the future, but I don't think this year. Just to piggyback on your statement there, Vinny, he's caught 20 passes in 19 college games. So, like you said, doesn't pass block, doesn't catch a lot of balls, and with the fumbling issues, I don't know how much he's really going to take from Hyde. Hightower is probably, like you said, the bigger threat for sure. Go.
I just had a quick note. They signed Kyle Juszczyk from the Ravens. He caught a lot of passes last year on the Ravens. So maybe to check what I said about Carlos Hyde increasing his pass work, maybe he won't. Because I should have combined those stats. But yeah, Kyle Juszczyk is a huge passing threat for some reason. I guess no one covers him when he runs out and stuff. But he could vulture some stuff. Just don't draft him. Don't do anything like that. But he could be a pain in the ass throughout the season.
Yeah, I am completely agree. Let's talk about wide receivers. Pierre Garçon. Love this guy. Even in the offense with Brian Hoyer here, he comes in, he reunites here with Shanahan when he was with the Redskins. He was a workhorse under Shanahan there. Again, I know different QB situations, but he averaged 9.58 targets a game in Washington. And you come over here to San Francisco. They're missing the NFL's 5th most targets from last year's roster. 218 targets are up for grabs. So you got to think a bunch of those go to Pierre Garçon. Whatever, call it 100, whatever you want to do. Garçon has averaged 5.85 targets per game without Shanahan in his career. So I think big things to come for Pierre Garçon in this offense. We saw Brian Hoyer be successful with DeAndre Hopkins. He fed him 111 passes or catches in 2015, and Cameron Meredith, he gave 8.75 targets per game last year. So I'm not worried about Pierre Garçon getting his.
Pierre Garçon lands in an interesting pool of wide receivers, though. He's going 3rd pick, 7th round. Right before him is Kelvin Benjamin and Emmanuel Sanders. And then you got Dante Moncrief, Jeremy Maclin, Eric Decker, Devontae Parker, which a bunch of us are high on, Randall Cobb, Deshaun Jackson, Cameron Meredith. That's a big pool.
Yeah.
So, by the way, if you guys are going running back heavy, don't worry about this 6th to 8th round of wide receivers because you'll get some value there.
Yeah, there's a lot of stuff going on. But
there's a lot going on. I don't know. That's a good pool. I mean, Shrek, you made some really good points of Pierre Garçon. Pierre Garçon has had some pretty solid years. I like him where he's landing, give or take. I could probably take a few behind him as well. But, I mean, that's a pretty solid few rounds of wide receivers. So I think that starts to become a preference-based ordeal for you.
Agree.
While you're drafting.
Yeah, I've seen Pierre slide a lot in a lot of mocks. So I think it's because, like you were saying, Don, there's a lot more fancy names, maybe some more opportunity, but the high volume is going to be what Pierre is going to bring to your team. And that's really all you can hope for in an offense that's probably going to have to play from behind a lot. And he'll be the number one target, like for sure, most targeted guy on the team for sure. So you're getting a lot of value really late, and you might have to fight off some of those impulses late on those big name guys like Deshaun Jackson or something like that. A few guys you mentioned to capitalize on like a number one wide receiver this late in drafts.
Yeah. Definitely. That's a good few rounds of wide receivers right there for sure.
So next wide receiver guys on the list, Jeremy Curley. They re-signed him to a 3-year deal worth $10.5 million. He led the 49ers in targets last year with 115. He only caught 64 of them for 667 yards. What do we think? Do we think Curley's a good pick this year? Is he worth it? I mean, again, the targets have to be made up somewhere.
Yeah.
I mean, Jeremy Curley's been always very, like, a go-to person. He had to be a go-to person in the Jets. Last year he had to be a go-to guy. I don't hate him, but I'm trying to see where –
I don't even think he's being drafted.
He's not.
He's not even being drafted yet. I mean, I'm cool with him being like a last-round wide receiver flyer if you had preference for him. I think he'll have some value this year. So, but give or take, it's – whoever you take at that point, it is what it is. I'd take Jeremy Curley over Tavon Austin.
Whoa.
Agreed.
And Tavon Austin's being drafted, so.
Yeah, it's true. I think me or Walsh drafted him last year. I think Walsh did. I think we had a bet somewhere in that awful offense. I forget. But, yeah, like you said, Trek, they got to make that up somewhere. Jeremy Curley has been there for a little bit. Like Don was saying, never been like a go-to guy and has been pretty good just overall. So it's definitely an interesting pick. I mean, it's going to be your last pick. So he might not even be on your team like week 2. Don't worry. So don't worry about it.
Yeah, definitely possible. Like you said, he's at the end of the draft, doesn't matter, but he dropped or he didn't catch essentially almost half his passes. If he can take 20% of those and make them catches,
his value can land somewhere more in daily fantasy too.
I agree.
Good point.
I agree, for sure. Anybody else in the wide receiver core you guys want to talk about? I got Marquise Goodwin here on the list.
I just think that's a fun ad for them. I mean, it's nothing huge, but get a little speed there. So
yeah, they have a couple of fun ads. They got Marquise, like you just said. They have Aldrick Robinson from the Falcons, but both like pretty big playmakers. So it's interesting from not a fantasy aspect. Like it just adds another dynamic to the offense that people think is bad, but will probably be pretty decent.
I think the team itself is kind of interesting, and it will be interesting to watch because I think all these players are just right above bad. Like they're not bad, but they're just like
they're all good, but they're not.
They're just like the average Joes out there that might actually be able to do something.
And they have a couple guys on defense. Like this team might not be like I don't know.
It'll be better to watch than last year, that's for sure.
For sure, but it's a tough division, so
tough division.
I feel a little bad, but
better than the Rams.
I agree, Don. I cannot argue.
All right, guys. So that's gonna do it there on the wide receivers. Tight end, you got Vance McDonald, and you got the rookie George Kittle. You guys have anything you want to say to any of these guys here?
Vance McDonald will be played 2 times by Walsh this year. That's a fact.
All right.
Okay. I don't. I mean, unfortunately, it's a bad team. Again, there's going to be a bunch of targets, but if we've learned anything, rookie tight ends typically don't produce. Although he is a great Kittle is apparently a great blocker, which is good. He tested with better results than O.J. Howard at the combine. Great. Vance McDonald's been bashed by some beat writers, but what do they know? So as far as I'm concerned, I'll stay away probably from the tight end situation and let Walsh play Vance McDonald twice.
I expect a text from Walsh like, what the fuck are you talking about?
Yep, that'll come in as he listens to the podcast once it's live. But that does it for me on the 49ers, guys. Anybody else you want to talk about?
That is it, man.
I think we talked about the whole friggin' team.
We did.
You did.
Yeah, there's actually a lot more names here than I thought to go through with the 49ers, and the Seahawks have a ton as well. But before we get to the Seahawks, guys, we're going to take a quick break. We're going to hear from Vupiq.
This year, dominate your friends with free play-by-play fantasy football from Vupiq. Vupiq is the first play-to-play fantasy football game where you crush your friends from the comfort of your own couch. For the first time in fantasy football, you must think like the players and coaches on the field as you predict the outcome of every play. Visit Vupiq.com, VUPIQ.com, and sign up now for an invitation to beta test.
All right, guys, that was Vupiq, and we are back with the Seattle Seahawks. Lots of names, lots of fantasy value, and let's start with none other than Russell Wilson at the helm for the Seattle Seahawks. He had his fifth straight top 12 fantasy quarterback season in 2016, guys. He had a bunch of injuries. He set career lows in every rushing statistic, and his passing efficiency was not great. I think he bounces back here. I think he's going, QB7, I think, off the board, which to me, 6. Okay. So I think he probably performs a little bit better than QB6. I think he bounces back a little bit. I think recency bias has us hating on Russell Wilson a little bit. What do you guys think?
Yeah. I like Russell Wilson this year. I think Russell Wilson's going to finish 4 or even maybe possibly top 3.
Oh, my God.
Damn. All right.
Now, that's totally fine. When healthy, top 5 guy. When he's not, top 10 guy. Like, what more do you want from Russell Wilson? Shrek, I know you owned him last year and had a little bit of a problem playing him on the weeks because he had those random injuries like that were reported and like not reported. I don't know if I just thought it'd be interesting for your take on how you dealt with like Russell Wilson and playing him when he wasn't fully 100%.
I did very poorly with it, and that was reflected in kind of how I finished out the year because I felt like I could never pick the right QB because I would bounce back and forth with he's injured, but I'd sit him, he'd play well the next week, and I'd be like, all right, well, he's got a good matchup here. But he had the ankle sprain in week 1, sprained his MCL in week 3, then he had the knee brace. He wasn't really running well. So it was really hard to decipher. Again, he, by all accounts, appears healthy going into the season. So if he's not injured going in, to drafts, again, I think recency bias is knocking him down a little bit. But yeah, it's one of those spots where it sucks. I was better off, playing the wire and grabbing, Marcus Mariota or some of those guys who ended up panning out and just sticking with it. But I got a little too attached to the name and thought I could play it right, and it clearly blew up in my face.
That just gave me the most horrible flashbacks of trying to figure out to play Jimmy Graham or Delaney Walker every week.
Don, I was actually going to ask you that question when we got to Jimmy Graham. I guess we can just talk about it now.
Let's do it.
Let's
Go ahead.
talk about it.
Don, relive, set the scene. Flashback.
I'm trying to not do that because I might have like a seizure of thinking about it. That was horrible. I mean, it was. I guess it was a good problem to have, but I really wish our league was a tight end flex opportunity because I probably would have played both of them instead of having to deal with that bullshit because, I tried to do, play numbers, do matchups. I'll play Delaney Walker this week instead of Jimmy Graham. Jimmy Graham goes off. I'm like, fuck it. Playing Jimmy Graham this week. Delaney Walker goes off. So never mix those two guys together because then all you want to do is fucking kill yourself. But I like Jimmy Graham this year. It looks like he's healthy. He had some good play last year, and that was with a hurt Russell Wilson, obviously, that we were talking about. I think Russell Wilson's going to have a good year. He built a lot of chemistry with Jimmy Graham, and Jimmy Graham is Jimmy Graham. So in the second, when Jimmy Graham, 2 seasons ago, was debatably going before Gronk and a first or second round, and now he's going to be around the second pick in the 6th round. That's some pretty good value. I like it.
Yeah, I'm having a hard time because the problem with Jimmy Graham, like even last year, was volume. He gets 95 targets, caught 65 balls. And that was when Russell Wilson kind of had to be a pocket guy. So I'm a little concerned if he's fully healthy and going to be running a little bit more. That's really the only knock I have. Like Jimmy Graham came back way stronger than I could have thought after the patella.
Oh, it was crazy.
Yeah, he's come back like I don't think anyone else has really. He might be the first guy. I don't know. It seems very hard to come back from that. Worse than ACL, MCL. But I'm just trying. I'm having a hard time. Like I can't see his volume improving from last year. And like you were saying, Don, it was hard to predict the weeks where he would go off and when he wouldn't, because he would disappear on some weeks. But that's kind of the tight end game we play anyway. It's just if you're going to take him in the 6th round, I think you're going to have to play him every week no matter what. And you could get stuck into a situation like Shrek was saying, Russell Wilson. You attach some name value, you put some draft stock into him. You kind of have, if he's playing poorly from, week in, week out inconsistently, you kind of have an anchor on your team. But that's really the only knocks I can think. Like everything else looks good.
Even like the bad weeks where I missed, it wasn't where Jimmy Graham even played bad. It was just Delaney Walker would go off. So I would sit there and kick myself because these guys had the potential just
to win your week.
Going off. These are like week winners, these type of tight ends. So that was the only thing. But, I don't know how much Jimmy Graham stock I'm going to be owning because I'm not really someone that's going to be going for tight end in the 6th round. I like it though, especially if you're looking for a higher end tight end. You got Jordan Reed up there who Jordan Reed is, always injury risk and he's going to a round higher. You got Greg Olsen who, he's consistent, but I think Jimmy Graham still has a higher ceiling. So I like Jimmy Graham with a few rounds later, and I think he could still be like a top 3 tight end this year. So
I think the question is, would you guys rather take Tyler Eifert or Jimmy Graham?
That's good. I'll take Jimmy Graham over Tyler Eifert.
I'm going to take Jimmy Graham as well.
I lean Tyler Eifert for various reasons.
Wow, weird. Why?
Very, very biased, and also just kind of banking on a healthy season.
Oh, he's friends with Jared Goff. That's right. What?
I don't think that's true at all, Don.
I'm pretty sure I saw them on the gram together.
I'm friends with Tyler Eifert, but that's all I got.
Okay. I would probably lean Graham here as well. He's got that upside again. Do I worry about the targets getting around, like you said, with Wilson becoming a little more mobile? Maybe. But he's kind of proven time and time again that he can do it. So, hopefully if you do own some Jimmy Graham, Don, hopefully a better year ahead for you. No flashbacks like we're putting
I'm cutting Delaney Walker's ass no matter if he's playing better than Jimmy Graham just because I can't deal with that shit again.
At least it's over. Then the decision is made. Let's go to the running back spot, guys, where we have a lot to talk about with Eddie Lacy, Thomas Rawls, Procise, the whole fucking mess. Eddie Lacy, for those of you that are wondering, is getting his bonuses for working out. Cheeseburger Eddie, good for you. When it comes to the football field, though, where do you want to put your stock in Seattle running backs this year?
Well, now I'm nervous.
Yeah, the reports are.
Where was that report from, Vin?
I believe Walsh said it, but I saw it on SleeperBot that Thomas Rawls. Oh. I mean, the plan was always Eddie Lacy and Thomas Rawls splitting the base down carries, which is like early downs and stuff like that. Passing work, obviously, CJ Procise. I think that's where you get the most guaranteed workload is from CJ Procise, but. It's scary with the big name guys like Eddie Lacy's going in the 7th with the 5th pick. Thomas Rawls is going in the 11th with the 1st pick. So the ADPs should almost be swapped because we're seeing that Thomas Rawls is now first team guy.
Yep.
And then behind Eddie Lacy. And then even then the upside of having either of these guys is pretty low, I think.
Yeah.
1, they're splitting work already. 2, they could be switching back and forth throughout games. It seems like a fucking nightmare.
Yeah, this is the type of things I don't really have much patience for to try and figure out because this is another thing that would just drive me nuts. So I'm probably not going to own Seattle running backs unless it really lands to a value pick just because I don't want to really deal with that. But again, we have a few weeks ahead of us before we really figure out any more. But I'm going to kind of stay away for now.
Yeah. I agree. I mean, I would use the term skip here just in the term that I'm not going to own any of them. Plenty to talk about, but
nice guys.
Great guys all around, but
it's just not worth the headache. Like Don talked about with his flashbacks, mine with getting through QBs and big names and investing draft capital in guys. It's not worth it. You got Eddie Lacy who's inconsistent based on his history. You don't know what's going to go on with Rawls, Procise. gets involved. Like you said, probably has the best return on his ADP. But all theoreticals with the Thomas Rawls news now that's coming out.
Yeah. It's weird, too, because Eddie Lacy and Thomas Rawls both coming off some pretty rough injuries, missed some time. Eddie Lacy missed a lot of time. Thomas Rawls only played 9 games. It just seems so – it's just awful. And every time I feel like they're going to give Rawls like the go-ahead, they don't. They're very reluctant to. And they have a lot of money in Eddie Lacy. They're fucking giving him $50K to fucking not eat. That's all.
That's great, man. Fuck.
Yeah, it's fantastic, but not for us. I can't figure it out. No. Who are you invested in? I just clearly they can't even decide for themselves splitting reps.
Yeah. That's a problem. We don't even know if they know. So,
yeah, which means we definitely have no freaking clue. All right, well then
I take a lot of notes too.
Yeah, you do, man. You kill the note game. Let's go over to wide receivers. We'll start with Doug Baldwin. ADP is
the 11th wide receiver. He's at the very end of the second round.
Okay, which I think is about right for Doug Baldwin. He hit career highs in targets, catches, and yards. Finishes wide receiver 8 in PPR, wide receiver 10 in non-PPR leagues. Again, I think you're buying him probably at pretty close to what his ceiling is. But again, Russell Wilson, healthy, throwing the ball. The Seahawks have the NFL's 9th softest schedule for slot receivers, according to Pro Football Focus's Scott Barrett. So I think all good things ahead for Baldwin. He played 73% of his snaps in the slot.
Yeah, I think that's like the perfect place for Doug Baldwin. I don't think he's overvalued or undervalued at all. Doug Baldwin, I think, has a pretty solid floor, but I think he can have a really great ceiling as well. Versus, the guy behind him is Brandon Cooks, where we think he has a really high ceiling, but could also have a very, very low floor. DeAndre Hopkins, should have wide receiver 1 value, but again, we don't know what's going on since after last year. So I think Doug Baldwin's a really nice place, and you should definitely take him exactly where he lands.
Yep. Yeah. Yeah. Dead on ADP, dead on everything else that Don said. Especially me, I've been way off Doug Baldwin like every single year, and he's always been good. And it took me till last year to just be like, oh wow, he is fantastic, and he's a really good wide receiver. Like he's one of the like elite guys that's kind of on the outskirts. Like we're all talking about like we end with Mike Evans, AJ Green, and stuff like that, and then Doug Baldwin, and he's kind of at the back end there. Gets no respect, but shit, it took me till like last year to see that. But he's a fantastic player.
Yes. Yeah. 100%. And I've overlooked him myself in the past, but finally getting some respect, at least here from Let's Talk Fantasy Football. Guys, let's talk about the other wide receivers, Tyler Lockett, Jermaine Kearse. Do you believe in either of them enough to invest any kind of draft capital? Because I feel like it's inconsistent all over the place with these guys.
Yeah, no. I think 2 years ago I was playing Tyler Lockett randomly, but it was, boom or bust kind of deal. You knew what you were getting into. He's a high ceiling flex play there, but he's coming back from a pretty rough neck injury, I think.
Yes.
Yeah, so that's not fantastic, but he is on the field running and stuff, so that is encouraging. Very fast guy, but that is what you will get. Kind of a boom and bust guy. Going pretty late, 13th round, 12th pick, kind of whatever. Like how were you talking? Like it's towards the end of the draft. You want to take a flyer. It's not the worst thing, at all. But you know what you're doing at that point.
Vinny, I think you hit on him before. I think it's really we can move the conversation over to like Paul Richardson, who has a chance, I think, kind of take Jermaine Kearse's spot there. Do we have any interest there, or is he still just let him fly, let him go, and we'll see what the season brings?
Yeah, he's a guy that I think will get picked up a lot. I don't know if he's going to get drafted. Maybe if you have like an overambitious guy in your league, taking him around probably the Tyler Lockett area, or with his last pick, like we were talking with the Flyers.
Yep.
So they're giving him an opportunity. He already passed Kearse on the depth chart, so he is running. He is running opposite Baldwin. So take that for what you will. It's not something like when have they ever had a consistent like wide receiver 2 on their offense? It's really never happened. And then when you're ranking them just pass catching guys, it's Doug Baldwin, Jimmy Graham, and then the scraps will go to Richardson. So there's really not a high ceiling on that stuff. I think if you're going to bet on like a flyer pick like that, you take Lockett, a guy who can catch a long touchdown, rather than Richardson.
Cool. Don, you agree?
Yeah, I mean that's pretty good. I mean, it looks like Jermaine Kearse and Paul Richardson are fighting for the number 2 spot right now. So we have seen Tyler Lockett, like you said, if you're hoping for that deep flyer. I mean, we've seen him have some decent fantasy weeks, and if you need a bye-week warrior and hoping for the best, I think Tyler Lockett would be that safer of a pick late in your draft.
Agreed. Is there anybody else on the Seahawks that you guys want to talk about?
Pete Carroll.
That guy sucks.
You love Pete Carroll.
Him and Smoking Jay, man. I wish I could hang out with those two for a day.
Pete Carroll coaching Jay Cutler is my dream. That would just be amazing. God.
I just threw up in my mouth, man.
Wow, what a way to go out. What a way to go out. All right, guys. So some self promo. Get the apps on Android and iOS. Let's Talk FantasyFootball.com/Apple and Android. You can find us on the Amazon store for Alexa skills, NFL news, flash briefings, and the podcast.
Oh, yeah, and push those notifications on, too, when you download us.
Oh, yeah. Push notifications coming out hot. Like I said, guys, it's 4 podcasts in 4 days. This will be the 4th one here for us this week, and we're excited. We're mocking all the time. You guys need to get mocking. And our next episode, guys, we're going to have we're going to talk about the final mock draft that'll be in the draft guide, but we're only going to give you a sneak peek of that. And next week we will dive into the AFC West. And I got to think Walsh will be here to talk Raiders. I'll be here to talk some Chiefs. And, I know we got a Chargers faithful here as well. So we're going to be well represented as we go into the AFC West. Guys, for Let's Talk Fantasy Football, I am Nick Schreck. We will catch you on the flip side.
This has been Let's Talk Fantasy Football. Thanks for listening.